What's up, guys? Big Papa Drock back with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and as you can see, I am not alone. I am joined here by Bront Cat Herder. Bront, how are you doing, man?
I am doing awesome, my man. How are you doing? It has been a fun week so far for you, I'm sure. Happy birthday again.
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing great, man. I'm still recovering from the birthday stream, which was last night as of the time of this recording. So I woke up at like, I think 1 o'clock today, 1:30. So really getting after it today, Bront. But thank you for asking, and thank you for the happy birthday wishes, man. So yeah, it should be a fun little collab that we've got going here. You came up with a good idea, and actually, Bront, this is the first time that I've ever done what we're about to do on like a video or in a video or on stream.
Ooh.
So kudos to you. And I know you guys are probably thinking what that is, but before we get into it, we did just do a collab on Bront's channel. Make sure to check that out, guys. Make sure to give Bront some love. Go follow him, subscribe to his channel. I'm going to link it down below in the description. And hopefully remember to put a pinned comment, but if I don't, at least it's in the description. And yeah, we do have a fun little collab on Bront's channel that I'd love for you guys to check out. So all that being said, what are we doing today? Well, Bront came to me. He said, Drock, I would love for you to take a look at my account as an arena player, and let's just do kind of a review and see if maybe we can make some improvements. So this isn't what I would call a full-fledged account makeover kind of stuff, but more of like discuss general strategies, look at Bront's teams, figure out if there's a way that maybe we can make some improvements, and talk about kind of the meta for where Bront is at his level. Because Bront, if I remember correctly, you are in gold 3, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in gold 3, and I figure I'm probably a good analogy for a lot of you guys out there, especially folks watching Drock and saying, I don't have all those champions. Well, neither do I. And you know, I've got a decent roster. I've certainly spent a little bit of money, but at the same time, it has definitely been a struggle, particularly because I have not pulled a mythical ever, actually, if you look at that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we're definitely, you got Marius, though, which is big.
Got
So there
Marius,
you
I've
go.
got Carnage, and I have Mikage. So
Nice.
I liking Carnage, too. He's a lot of fun.
So this is actually kind of fun for me to take a look at this, because it really is such a different world when you're not a big spender when it comes to arena. But that being said, there's always opportunities to improve. And what's interesting, taking a quick look, you have some really good champions. Like, you've got some legitimately meta champions for arena teams. We've got, like you said, you've got Mikage, you've got Carnage that can certainly work. Rhonda isn't bad as long as people aren't in Stone Skin. Mithral has made a comeback, and Korra and Narcissus and Sifi. Freya, Armand's, UDK, like there's some really good arena champions on here, Bront.
Yeah, Georgid, double Hegemon. That was a weird pull. And yeah, Harima is, you know, one of my favorites. Leo is actually still on there, still obviously not necessarily meta per se. Leo was my first Void Legendary. So, you know, probably needs a bit of a rework because I don't think I've reworked him in a year and a half other than
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats, and like the damage doesn't look bad, but oof, that speed is rough. So we're going to get into all that kind of stuff, but I guess let's start with the idea of kind of, you know, you're in gold 3. What are the teams you tend to use the most? Let's start there. And then not only that, but what are the teams that you tend to face the most? So what are you seeing at your level that has been most successful for you when you use it? And then also, what are people using against you the most often?
Yeah, I mean, I have probably become dependent on Narcissus more than anything else. Both as a damage dealer and as somebody that can take damage. He is really, and he's really well built as far as my nukers are concerned. I used to love using Rhodos, but he's just fallen out with UDK. It is so easy to counter Rhodos with a single other champion. And when people are taking Armands and Sifi and you know, UDK is not the one you think to ban over the Armands, and then Rhodos is still just not doing anything for you. I love my Georgid as the other nuker, and then Harima. So it's probably a rotation of Georgid, Harima, and Narcissus are probably my big 3 nukers. Odin has been a big revelation for me because Odin does a lot of the lockout. In many ways, very similar to Armand's, not quite as busted, but he's got so much more utility because he's got the block damage and the extra one-shot kill that he can use if you've got him built properly, which you may or may not be able to see the stats because I'm probably in the way. But
You see most of them. Like it's not a. I think the biggest difference that I can see right away between my level and where you're at is just overall speed.
mhm.
When I think about my account and where I'm at, like every one of the champions I try to use most often, including nukers now, are well over 300 speed, and all of the supports are over like 440, 450, which is the big difference. And it just goes to show like how different things are at the high level versus where you're at. And it's not like you're at a level where people haven't spent. Like you're facing
Mhm.
people that are spenders. It's not all free to play, but it's so eye opening to see that kind of difference. Because for me, for example, I look at my Odin build. You're rocking 274 speed. I'm rocking, I think, 350, 360 with full crit rate, crit damage, and something like 600 plus accuracy. So it's crazy that stat differences and levels, but I don't think any of these that I've seen so far are necessarily bad builds.
Well,
I
and I
think
expect some of the stuff too is like Odin. I've only got a 2-star blessing in him. You've probably got a 4 or 5-star blessing now, maybe.
yes, I have a 6-star blessing on Odin, so that is one of the
Exactly.
differences for sure, which definitely makes a big difference. Um,
Yeah, that's part of why Narcissus I think is actually so good. As I pulled a 5-star soul for him, I think, and that
yeah.
was absolutely huge in getting that extra crit rate and crit damage on him at the crit rate. But
Now I'm curious. Have you had a chance to use Freya yet? Have you popped her out in any battles or not?
yes, actually, she's one of my flex spots. So generally, what I've been finding I've been able to do is with Marius. I will grab Marius and Odin and Narcissus. Probably Narcissus my number one, Odin number two, Marius number three,
Mm,
and then try to grab either Sify or Arby. And if I haven't grabbed one of those other two, or somebody's taken a Sify or an RB because they tend to get picked, because
yeah,
speed's still a meta,
typically,
then it
yeah.
might be a Freya, it might be an Ancora. It's yeah, Sify's my fastest
I was
champion.
just gonna say this is
And
not a bad build for a Siphi whatsoever. So you have a chance. So what I would imagine when you go with Sifi, are you typically outspeeding people or are you still getting outsped?
um depends on who's on the other end. Shuzens give me absolute nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Shuzen will almost always outspeed my Sify, and I don't know how much of that is just their builds are better than mine, or they're just better overall. Obviously, my Arbor could use a little more speed. Some of it is
Yeah.
just how much do I rip off of everything else to get some of those champions a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Um, but it's been the case. I've got that's my reset Kymar.
Yeah,
So
I was
that
gonna
is
say you're definitely
my
not using that one for arena. I can just tell based on look at the stats. I'm
well,
like, there's
I
no way.
used to. He used
Did
to be
you
the one I
actually?
used for arena because what I used to do with
Because the
him is
resistance.
he used to be high resistance, run
Mm-hmm.
slow. He was just faster than my nuker, so that when I got locked out, I would use him to unlock my nuker, and then my nuker would blow everyone away.
So this is actually a great question. Is this enough resistance at your level to resist lockout, or are you still getting locked out if you use this guy? If you even
He is
even
at
used him
what,
recently?
750, I think, right?
Yeah, 769 is what it looks like.
That is enough to probably have a 50-50 shot unless it's a mythical.
It's so, oh man, it just cracks me up that like 700 something resistance, even at your level, is not a consistent enough, amount to actually resist stuff. But
Oh, and
that's
to be fair, you can
that's
see how old school he is because I haven't ascended his gear yet.
yeah,
So it
yeah, he's
hasn't been
definitely
important.
old school.
you know, Ascending his gear, I can get another 60, 80 resistance on him probably. So,
So this is interesting. So this is a pretty slow Yumiko, all things considered. Are you using her in other areas or just in arena?
I use her for one of my reset champions for a couple things because she's a good champion all around. I used to have her at about 320, 330, and then I stuck her in Stone Skin and I lost a lot of speed, unfortunately, when I did that.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting choice. I guess, the biggest thing when you look at arena is you have to be cognizant, of course, of what your specific gear allows you to do. And even at my level, where I have some pretty fast champions, I still lose the speed race a lot, actually, to the top accounts because they can just outspeed me across the board, not only on supports, but also on nukers. And that's the biggest thing. Let's take a look at your hegemon right now, because this is obviously a big counter for what's going on at the moment, as long as people aren't in Stone Skin. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've got two of them actually. That is my nuker, and then I have the stun hegemon, who I think is the one that got the 2-star blessing. basically I had two Hegemons and I wasn't going to +1 him at the time because he ceased being meta around the time I got the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a 5-star soul for him and said, you know what, let's just throw the 5-star soul in a second one and build the nuker because that 5-star soul was going to make that nuking stat a lot better.
Yeah. So I'm curious here. Do you use the stun one in arena as well or not?
Mostly in
Most.
classic arena.
Okay.
What I will often do for speed farming is I will run a all Knights Rev team of Hegemon, and Korra Narcissus. And generally that can actually still take on a lot of classic arena teams pretty well because where the Hegemons will throw some stuff out there to get the control and then the nuke, and then Narcissus and Korra is good enough to clean up most teams in most
Yeah.
cases.
Okay. So, all right. So, first thing I think that everyone can learn from when it comes to approaching arena, and it's something I'm seeing on quite a few of your champions, not all, because Narcissus is an exception, but I don't care what the champion is. If you're going to use them in arena, absolutely ascend the gear. Even if you can only do it, and I'm just going to, you got plenty, so I'm just going to do it for two right now, but even if you can only do it one or two, this really matters. Like, you would be shocked at how much of a difference this can make, whether you're getting attack, HP, defense, it doesn't matter. If you're going to use a champion in arena, do your absolute best to try to ascend gear. And obviously we have attack here, but even when it comes to reworking stuff, I know a lot of people believe in not reworking potentially top pieces, but look, every stat counts. Every bit of attack counts. Every bit of survivability counts. Don't be afraid to rework once, maybe twice, some of the upper pieces as well. Like, obviously you get more out of the bottom pieces, but the downside to trying to rework bottom pieces, and I'm sure this has happened to you, is sometimes you just can't get the freaking stat and you're on like the 7th reroll and you're like, dude, this is way too much of an expense, especially when I'm not a massive spender to have the energy to go back in. And so honestly, those scenarios, go to your top level pieces, ascend these bad boys. Everybody that you're using, every major piece here should be at the minimum 2-star, because you're always going to have way too many of these things over everything else because of the absurd rates. But frankly, for your main pieces or for great pieces, take them all the way up. Take them all the way up. It does make a difference. So that's one of the first things that I would say, and I would do the same thing for your accessories. Like, let's take a look at where we're at here with the accessories. Yeah, we got 16,000 of this. Yes, we want more stats. We want more defense. We want more HP, attack, whatever it is. We want more of it. So that's the first thing across the board. Any champ you're going to use arena, take that, do that once you have built them.
Actually, on that point, you want to go over to my He-Man for a second?
Yeah, let's take a look at your He-Man.
Now, I've got him obviously all ascended, and I did this for a video. Okay stats. He doesn't have a blessing, and I think that's really where the crit damage kind of falls down, because you give him another 28 crit damage, and suddenly that's decent. But if you check his boots and his chest, I re-rolled both of those a couple of times. I think I'd rather have speed or attack percent on the boots, but I chose to live with HP percent because it's still a damage stat. And at some point in time, I'm not going to spend 25, 30, 40 chaos dust.
Yeah, you're totally fine with this, especially for a build like He-Man. And I think that's the big difference versus big spender versus low spender versus free to play is it's just you're limited by resources. So when you don't get what you need, sometimes you just have to throw in the towel instead of trying to keep going, unless it's such a god tier piece that it's like, no, this one is really worth burning absurd amount of chaos dust to do. But for the most part, this is the right approach. Like, you get HP percentage, guess what? On He-Man, that's a great damage boost and it's a survivability boost. And really, this He-Man build isn't horrific. The speed is rough. I think that's the biggest thing with He-Man. You'd really like to see him faster because you want to go through Stone Skin. But like, even if you look at your Rotos, base level Rotos, this is not a bad Rotos build at all. Really good HP. I'm a big believer in building Rotos with more HP than worrying about his attack, because you get that survivability and that damage at the same time. The speed is not bad whatsoever. It's certainly not as fast as you might see at the top level, but Rotos is a really tough champion to build because his speed is so low base wise. But funny enough, on the subject of Rotos, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of counters for him, but frankly, if you have an opportunity to bring him into certain battles, don't sleep on him, man. He's still one of the absolute scariest champs in the game. And as long as if they've gotten to a point where they've left Rotos open and it's last pick, and they didn't pick someone like UDK, I'm taking Rotos every single time. Survivability plus damage, immensely scary. And you also put that in their head where if I don't ban this guy, I might just lose my entire squad, you know, and that's a really big important thing.
And to be fair, I don't have him in Merciless, which is the meta build, but they don't know I have him in Merciless.
Yeah, they don't know necessarily. Of course, they're not going to know what your guys built in or whatnot. Now, I'm really interested here, and this is a great example, UDK, where I'm surprised we're not seeing a reaction on this. Is there any particular reason why?
Probably because I don't think I've rebuilt him anytime recently, so I don't actually pull him out as much as I probably should.
Okay.
So I probably should start putting some of that reaction on there. And to be fair, either of those HP banners should be fine on him. In fact, that one looks pretty nice.
Let's roll it because we're an artifact enhancement and I can't help myself. You got plenty of silver. Let's do it. Come on, triple roll, baby.
If you want.
Triple roll. 111. Still good because it's an HP banner. HP. Okay, we got speeds. This is actually a worse piece for UDK because of the speed, but still. One of the big things I would say, especially the lower level you are, is reaction is significantly more viable. People don't have enough damage the lower down you go when someone has reaction to threaten a tanky champion whatsoever. The higher up you go, the less viable it becomes. And a great example is on my account, I've tried to build a go second team where I just make the absolute tankiest, like Harima, all reaction, everything reaction all over the place. And the problem is people are just so fast at my level that it does not matter, that they're able to get enough turns or enough control or don't get sheep because of pinpoint or whatever else, that even with all reaction across the board on god tier build champions, I can't survive. But at your level, reaction is really, really, really viable. And I think the other thing too is if you can't win a speed race, and Freya is a great example of this. Freya is someone that I personally want to start using on my account and that I'm working to build a little bit, but I would look to see, like, is there a way to get reaction on her? You know, like 9-piece protection, that's cool, that's great, but from an arena perspective, this champion not necessarily as useful as potentially keeping her alive just in case your nuker gets to a point where he dies so that she can use her passive. You know,
and that might be a case. Yeah, that might be a case where I use her in Hydra, and that's where I've got this 9-piece protection. In Hydra, I almost don't need a healer of at least anything significant to bring her along because her shields are so chunky. She's got the cleanse, and she adds so much damage. In fact, I ran tests basically where I end up swapping her out for Mikage to add additional damage and counterattacks with a 9-piece Slayer Cupidus. And they do honestly somewhere between 25 to 50% more damage with Freya than they do with Mikage, which is really impressive. But this might be where using some of these presets may actually be something. I don't know how often you use the presets for stuff. I tend not to use them, which is probably bad on my part.
Oh, we got a resistance and core here. This is interesting. So you make a valid point. And this is, I think, the other tough thing with accounts that aren't large spenders is for the most part, your champions are pulling double duty, right? Your Freya is someone you're going to use in Hydra and you're going to use potentially in other areas of the game, depending on where your account is, and also try to use in arena. And that's really, really, really hard to progress in arena if you're not building arena specific builds, especially the higher up you go. Now there are opportunities where an arena build and a PvE build overlaps. And a great example of this for example, is Sifi, where currently the meta for Sifi right now, at least in high-end arena, is protection. Super fast, super tanky, all protection. That's the way to go for high-level arena. Possibly Swift Parry still very viable at the high level too. Very annoying set to face in arena, even now. So that's like one of the things where, yeah, you could build a protection set for Hydra on Sifi and it's still viable for arena. Now, the biggest question is, do you have the insane speeds? Probably not in protection, right? That's the tough thing. And so I think what you've done here makes sense to go specifically with an arena-based build. But one of the things
just to show off that chest, by the way, too, that chest I've got in her, I really want to get that on Rotos.
Oh my Lord, look at this.
I just can't get it off of her. It just, you know.
Dude, I don't even have a quad speed HP percentage piece on my account. Literally. I don't think I have a single quad HP percentage piece chest piece on my entire account in any set. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I
that's
do,
not
it's
on
only
Siffy,
one.
that's going on my Rotos, because I mean Rotos is an instinct because that gives them the extra speed.
Yeah, the
and
extra speed, I
Rotos
saw
would
that.
absolutely slay with that too.
Yeah. So okay, so you're using Ancora. So resistance, again, you said at your level is mostly viable. Resistance Ancora is an interesting choice, not a bad choice whatsoever, of course, because
She's about 80 to 90% resistance, even mythicals. And I'm
okay,
actually
even mythicals.
even mythicals with 866. So
Okay.
I probably
Yeah.
could squeeze a little more. I don't know if that. Yep, actually, I don't have that. Why don't I have that glyphed?
Yeah,
That's
so
my
this
bad.
is the thing people forget all the time when it comes to their champions for arena. They do not glyph their stuff fully, right? So you got to glyph your stuff, and they do not ascend their stuff. And here's another great example, right? This is a rare piece, but you got it because it has resistance. We'll go ahead and use it. And again, you've got so many of the littles that you owe it to yourself to do it. Now, obviously, this rolled crit damage. You're probably not going to use this on a rare piece.
Go ahead,
but
reroll. Go ahead, reroll that. You've got
why not? Well, hold on. Before we do that, let's just take a quick
Mm-hmm.
look here. If you're doing a resistance build, let's just make sure we've got the most resistant piece on her. So you're going pinpoint. So I'm assuming that's probably your best pinpoint piece. Attack, HP, no resist there. Let's just make sure.
I've only got one other piece of resistance, and it's the attack piece right there.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If I'm going resistance, I'm still rolling this to see if it double or triple rolls resist. Now, unfortunately, it didn't. But if this double or triple roll resist, screw it. I'm sacrificing the 3k HP. Straight up. I'm going to sacrifice the HP if I get an extra 30, 40 resistance. Because if you're going full resistance, getting to 900 or whatever, getting to like 900, completely worth it over an extra 3k HP for this specific build. Even though this is an attack amulet and not what you would normally want to put on a champion, it's still worth doing. Because
honestly, that's probably a piece worth
re-rolling.
Yes, or
Yeah, you could. Let's roll to 12 and see if it triples. Okay, yeah, we definitely should re-roll this, and I'm going to do that right now. All right, come on. We want HP triple resist. Come on, baby. HP, come on, come on. Still a great piece, though. Still a great piece, especially in pinpoint. But yeah, so this is again something that people forget all the time. Ascend, awaken, all the stuff, enhance, all of it. Like go through your best pieces once you've settled on a build and start going through and maximizing as much as possible. Now, the only other thing that I would look at and suggest or try to work in more often, especially if you're not winning the speed race all the time, is let's get some reaction on these boys. You know what I mean? Like, especially here with Narcissus, this is HP. Like, why are we not rolling this? Roll this. Oh my lord. I am your good luck charm. Quad. Okay, whatever. Still two. But this is a great example, right? So we lose 3k HP here, right? Without glyphing this. You know, we lose a little bit of defense before it's glyphed. Let's just ascend this quickly, see if we get HP. No, we got attack. This is still you're reworking this stuff
until it gets HP.
Yeah, we're reworking this for sure. Let's go again. One more. Come on. Yes,
and here's
there
the
we
thing,
go.
I think a lot of people miss this. The rings and the top pieces have a 50% chance to hit the stat you want if you're re-rolling them too.
That's
exactly why you might as well try it.
That's exactly why people don't do those pieces. There, you have a much better chance of getting what you want out of top pieces and out of rings and rings more than anything else. Amulets a little bit because you're only adding crit damage there, but it's why people ignore it. You can't do that in arena. You want to max stats. So here's an example of a piece where, by the way, I'm 6-star in this, just so you know. This is what in the game, whatever, gives us 5. I'm not going to roll that again. There's no reason to. But
defense on there too.
But I'm definitely 6-star in defense on this as well. God, one more. Okay, there we go. There's the max roll, baby. And we're 6-starring defense on this too. And this is the other thing as well. Don't be afraid to use this stuff. I know how incredibly hard it is to get these things, but you got to use these glyphs if you really want to give yourself the best advantage. So here's a great example, right? We're losing 1400 HP. Okay. We're gaining 73 defense, but we're gaining reaction. We're gaining a reaction piece here. Hell yes, because this makes us more likely to survive if you're not in the opportunity to go first. Now, I'm not putting any other reaction on here because we're sacrificing too much stuff on this specific champion.
Yep.
But reaction is a godsend for lower level accounts. If you've played the game long enough, you probably have a decent amount of reaction, hopefully. Again, even if it's not the specific piece that you want, if the substats roll the way that you need them to roll, sometimes it is worth doing. And an example would be like, a reaction here, hypothetically, if you weren't using pinpoint, if it were attack and that had rolled resistance, for example. So that's one of the big things. The other big thing that I'm seeing here too is on some of these champions, George is a great example, right? Now you've done an incredible job of building a George that does nasty damage.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm building this champion, I'm sacrificing damage for speed. I'm sacrificing damage for speed. And the simple reason why is
speed boots level sacrifice damage for speed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm talking speed boots. I'm sacrificing because look, here's the thing about Georgia. You're not keeping this dude alive. You know what I mean? Like, you're not keeping him alive. If he is slow, he is most likely dead. Unless you're building him in Stone Skin and Savage, which is also not the best build for Georgid because of how squishy he is in general. So champions like Georgid or He-Man, you need to build them as fast as humanly possible. And if it means that you sacrifice a little bit of damage to do it, so what? You absolutely should do that. So let's just take a quick look here and see if you have a speed. Like Cruel and Savage is great. Yeah, we're totally down with that. Cruel and Savage. I think this had crit rate on it. It did. So this is not a bad boot, not a great boot, but not a bad boot. Let's see what we've got. Let's go to the equipped as well, because Georgia is still one of the most viable champs in the game, as long as you have the right setup for him. Now, we're not going to take anything off your Man-Eater, because obviously I'm assuming you're using that.
That's my second Rotos, so he's actually...
Oh, this is your second Rotos?
That's my second Rotos.
Nice.
That's
okay,
not
we
enough
lose
crit rate, I think.
But this is, we lose 12. We lose what? What do we lose here? We gain 24 speed. We lose a K of attack and a little bit of crit damage, but this hasn't been ascended yet either.
Yeah, check that other unequipped one first too, to see if that's. But yeah, we might as well send this anyway because
you want to get speed on this, so let's start with that. But let's take a look here. Not enough crit rate. This is a 5-star. Not enough crit rate. So this is probably, if you're gonna keep with your Cruel Savage build, these, hold on, this always gets confusing for me. Okay, here we go. These are the ones to go for, right? And even though this isn't a perfect boot, again, if you're keeping Cruel Savage, right, and maybe you get rid of Cruel here in order to go faster still, which honestly I probably would do, even if you're going to lose some attack, because realistically speaking, Georgid, whether you kill someone or don't kill someone, comes down to does his passive activate. At 7,900 attack and 327% crit damage, he's still going to blast through somebody as long as they don't have reaction and as long as the passive, activates. Guess what? At 8,900 attack and 339% crit damage, he's not going to blast through someone with a reaction. It's not going to make a difference. And he's not going to blast through someone who's super tanky if his passive doesn't fully activate. So it's the same thing. You'd much rather have the speed. In live arena, more than anything else, speed is the absolute most important thing you can do. And it's not just speed on your supports, it's speed on your nukers as well. And the only way to try to counter that, the only way, is if you can build insanely tanky, still fast, triple reaction builds. And that's the thing. They still have to be fast, even if you're going second. That's one of the biggest mistakes
even having the
people
reaction
make.
banner on him then, because obviously he's super squishy anyway. I think that banner just may be a good banner, so
it's not a bad banner. It's never a bad thing to have a reaction banner on him, right? Because you may not be able to go first. And I didn't notice that. I don't think you have a Necrit, right? So you're not.
I do.
Do you have a Necrit? So is that how you usually roll them? You roll them with a Necrit?
Sometimes. Necrit's right below Harima.
Right below Harima. Okay, there he is. Yes, you do have a Necrit. Got it. So we do have a Necrit here. Good. Actually, not a bad Necrit build whatsoever, especially for your level. Double Stone Skin. Some people do Stone Skin Bolster. I don't know. I kind of like double Stone Skin Necrits just because it gives you more flexibility to keep him alive for an extra turn. But either one works.
I don't think I had a lot of accessories. And that's, I guess, part of the problem, too, is we got shut out of the Hydra Clash for 9 weeks in a row because of matchmaking issues with Hydra Clash. And I am definitely behind on the Stone Skin accessories, although I probably have more now. So maybe that's just one of these things I need to actually dive into and look at as well.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the things that's good for your viewers, my viewers, whatever else, is it is so easy to just kind of build somebody, think you built them well, and never revisit it, if
Yeah.
you're not revisiting these things, you're just letting your champs decay.
The best arena players revisit their builds on a weekly basis. No joke. I mean, like, legitimately, they are going in and they are tweaking stuff on at least a bi-weekly, if not weekly basis. One, because the more you face people in arena, the more they know what you're doing. Great example of this is anybody watches Biohack, who has a legitimate spreadsheet on every person that he faces. And Bio, I love you for doing it. But even if you don't have a spreadsheet, you have something in your mind where you're like, I remember the last time I faced this person and this is what they did. You know what I mean? And at every level, like, you're less likely to run into the same names at lower level of arena, whereas at high level you're definitely seeing the same names all the time, so it's easier to keep track of this stuff. But even still, revisit your builds, because you don't know what kind of pieces of gear you're going to get, especially doing Hydra class, which is so important. And certainly that's where my account has struggled, is getting those god tier stone skin pieces. Unfortunately, they matter a ton in today's arena, more than people realize. But so that's the other thing here I'm looking here is, like, we need our nukers faster. Overall, going through your account, that's one of the big things I'm doing. I'm changing speed. I'm speeding up Georgian. Leorius is still very viable, especially now more nether. Like, he's got to be faster. 185, not going to cut it. Like, you're just going to get absolutely lapped, and teams that are faster than you are just going to crush you. And even his passives that keep him alive or prevent him from being controlled, it's not going to matter, because they're going to have stuff that overcomes that, either strips his unkillable or locks him out or whatever else. So across the board, nuker wise, we're getting
Harima.
What was that?
Take a look at Harima.
Take a look here. So interesting that you've got Soul Reap on her. So that's interesting. Okay.
It for a while it was the nuker thing to do for a while, and I still find that, I know that it doesn't work against other Harimas, but if I take my Harima, they're not going to have a Harima. So from that perspective, it's not an issue in live arena anymore. But clearly she's too slow.
Yeah, she's way too slow.
Yeah,
way too slow.
And I would like to try to get her in Stone Skin, because she's the tanky champion you can put in Stone Skin. It's actually somewhat viable.
Yeah, for
The
sure. I mean,
really is, what kind of decrease in damage am I looking for? Get her in Stone Skin, that's okay.
So here's the thing about Harima, right? I'd rather sacrifice the defense, because she has a skill that raises this, over the course of a battle. So if I'm building Harima, and it's also on a relatively low cooldown, 3 turns. So you can sacrifice some defense on Harima and improve your HP, and even sacrifice some crit damage to improve both your speed and HP. Because really the benefit of Harima is, it's not only that she is a damage dealer, it's that she is also at the same time a support character, right? She is a champion that helps you stay alive, which is so important in arena. And if you're lucky enough to have a Harima, you need to maximize her to stay alive while also doing damage. You want both, especially if you're not always going to win that speed race. If you're somebody who's always winning a speed race, you can lean further into the damage area, because you're confident in stripping buffs. You're confident in going first. It's less of a problem. But if you don't have ultra god tier champs, everybody the fastest, well, Harima is a great way to try to deal with going second, or, try to lean into that. So if I'm building Harima here, the first thing I'm looking at is, what do I have reaction wise? If I don't have the Stone Skin pieces, because Stone Skin Savage is certainly a great build for Harima, but if I don't have Stone Skin Savage, I'm looking at reaction. Can I get her into a triple reaction set so that she is tanky and stays alive and keeps my other champions alive who might be able to help her or heal her? That's the first thing I'm doing, right? Like, if you had a 6-star, then I'm leaning fully into reaction and going polymorph, because then I want to make sure I'm taking away people's pinpoints, and I'm trying to screw up their team by the chance that they get polymorphed on champions that are placing debuffs. And I'm confident that with a triple reaction build, potentially over a Stone Skin Savage, you can get the level of survivability that you need to do that. But you don't have her 6-star, so that's the one downside. You're not going to build her with accuracy. You definitely don't want this champion with accuracy, because then she becomes a sheep herself. But for sure, like, this build, not viable for live arena. It's not that it can't work. It's just that you're over prioritizing defense and crit damage and under prioritizing HP and speed. You need her faster for sure. So for example, am I taking off a defense boot to get her faster? Yeah, I probably am. I probably am going with a speed boot here that has some level of substats that I want in order to get her to the speed necessary to really compete. Am I Potentially even, I mean, God, on my Harima, I think I have her of an HP ring that has a quad defense roll because I want more HP on her. And I think my Harima, again, +4, fully awakens. Let's just, let's obviously understand that. But I've tried to build her to have over 70,000 HP and over, like, I think 7,500 8K defense, like somewhere in that neighborhood, while still having really good crit damage. And obviously, big difference in accounts. But that's kind of what you want to lean into here. Harima's value isn't just in that she does damage, it's that she keeps everybody else alive. Same kind of thing with Freya, right? Like, I'm taking Freya out of protection set for Arena. I'm putting her into, if I can do it, triple reaction in Stone Skin, or even, depending on what kind of teams you're facing. If you're facing like a lot of burners like Gizmac or stuff like that, you could go triple reaction if you have it, and something like immunity or feral, which sounds crazy, but again, depending on what you're facing, you have to try to have different ways to counter it and different ideas. And I think that's the other big change here too, is burners are all over the place. Stone Skin is less viable because of burners. I don't know if you face a lot of Gizmacs, but yes, you do.
Occasionally.
Yeah. Occasionally, but it's nice to have a team built for that kind of stuff. And that's something I have to do on my own account. I have to build some of these things. So what I'm going to be doing on my account, for example, is I'm going to make my Freya ultra high resistance, as survivable and as fast as I can possibly do it, but in triple reaction, so that she's less likely to get locked out. So I have more flexibility. She's less likely to get sheeped. So I can hypothetically leave an Armand's in there, just, giving me more flexibility with what I'm doing. But like, the thing about your account is you actually have really meta champs. Like, really solid, like there are some really solid things you can do here. Now it just comes down to, do you have the gear to gear enough of them to counter enough things? But if I'm prioritizing champs on your account, certainly, obviously, Marius is definitely up there because he's so damn good. So let's take how you, this is an interesting build for Marius. You got him in pinpoint?
Pinpoint and lethal.
Okay, is this the best you can do?
Yeah, in fact, if you look at the gloves, they have a crit rate ascension on them because I can't get enough crit rate to get to that 100%.
Okay. Funny enough, I don't have my Marius in a pinpoint. There are definitely advantages to it. Avoiding getting sheeped. I just roll with him in Stone Skin.
Well, mine's more, as I think I mentioned, it's actually to avoid the stun from Armands if Armands tries to stun him. So I literally use them to counter Armands.
Yeah, you use them to counter Armands. Yeah, that's totally viable. And that would be the biggest reason to put him in pinpoint. It's just tough because in pinpoint, his stats are real bad, right? Like, this is rough. This low defense, this low speed, this low accuracy, that's the one downside. So this would be a champion that I would really, if it's working for you, and specifically that's your Armand's counter, cool, keep him as he is. But this would be one that I would really think long and hard about. Do I have builds in other sets that are going to allow me to have significantly better stats? And this is this is a great example of why I don't like pinpoint gear and how I don't like how they've tried to solve polymorph, because this kind of gear, you had to have absurd amounts of energy to farm and then get extremely lucky on top of that. And there's only a handful of accounts that were able to do that, especially with a limited time dungeon. It's a poor way to solve a problem, and that's why the problem isn't solved. But this would be an example of a champion that I would really revisit and think about what is the delta between the stats I can put him in, for example, a Stone Skin set, Stone Skin Savage, Stone Skin Lethal. Can I do something better there? Is it a large enough gap to where I don't want to put him in the pinpoint anymore, and maybe I keep him in that set and I use him more as a mythical counter and less of as an Armand's counter? And then these, that's the thing about this. You're never going to have everything. You can never have every single thing in a champ, even if you have the most god tier gear ever. And that's part of the challenge, right? So only you know the kind of accounts that you face the most often and what you're running into. But I would still revisit and say, like, if I can get my Marius in Stone Skin Savage or Stone Skin Lethal, and he's got 290, 300 speed, and he's got 6,000 defense, and he's got 380 or 400 accuracy and 280 or 290 crit damage, I'm making that switch personally. Like, that's such a large delta of damage that it's worth it at that point to make that switch. But only you know your account that well, only you know what is possible. And it might mean that you strip other people to do it. But on the whole, man, like, you've definitely got really solid champs. I think you just need to go back. You need to start ascending some of your pieces and Enchanting your gear for sure on the champions that you want to use. You need to make your nukers faster wherever and whenever possible, even if it means sacrificing a little bit of damage. That I think will make one of the biggest differences for you for sure, just because you'd be shocked what having a fast Georgia will do, even if he doesn't have as much damage. He's still a viable threat to take out a lot of champions, especially if someone else is running someone like a Marius. Like, well, guess what? With Georgia, he's probably dead. He's probably dead even with lower stats here. And if you go first with that champion, if that's your like, I'm going to try to go first here, I'm doing Odin, Siphi, Arbiter, I'm running full Void. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what, I'm going to try to go first. And my damage dealers are going to be Georgia to deal with Stone Skin, and they're going to be Marius to deal with Stone Skin. That's what I'm going to do here.
Just a quick question on Georgia there, because I got them there. If you see, he's got 2 refresh items, and those just happen to also be some of the best ones I could put on him. But what do you think of refresh in general?
I think refresh still has a place. It's certainly not as impactful as it once was, just because sets like, God, what the hell is the speed set now that you get from farming? Remind me, or not from farming, but from Live Arena. Impulse? Is that what it is?
Yeah, Impulse. Impulse has got the reset on it as well.
Yeah, Impulse is a speed set with reset, which is by far one of the best sets in the entire game. And of course, you have to play Arena to get it. But like, look, if these are your best pieces, awesome, sick, put them on there. If you have better pieces potentially that make a significant improvement, like this is that. Yeah, I'm keeping this on here. Attack percentage with attack. This is a great piece. No brainer. Crit damage ascension, like, yeah, HP extra and maybe not the best, but not the worst either. A little more survivability on Georgia, it's never a bad thing. The tough thing with reaction that I saw when I had my Georgia built, still fast but also reaction, is that unless I had him in triple reaction, it was just pointless, because people would have multi-hit abilities and he wouldn't proc it enough and he wouldn't have survivability enough for it to matter. But what makes the biggest difference for him as a champion is, can you just get more speed? Can you get more speed? You know what I mean? And for your hegemon, for your damage dealer hegemon, I'm going back in here. I'm trying to get this attack up. Speed's fine because you're using him to specifically counter teams that are fast. But like, can I get this up? Can I make him more of a threat?
Well, he's not a sense either on some of that stuff, so that'll probably add quite a bit there too.
Tons of opportunities here to get more damage. I'm also for hegemon, I don't mind having a little more accuracy.
That's what the accuracy one's for. But yeah, I guess it doesn't make, if I can get the attack up there, yeah.
Even on the damage dealing hegemon, because if you can't kill, so some of the times you see usually at higher levels where even with a really strong hegemon, you don't have enough to get through a shield, you don't have enough to kill a champion that's fast because they're still built tanky at my level. But guess what? If you put a block active skills, if you don't kill them, guess what? That's just as good most of the time. So I would even throw a little bit in there. The biggest thing there is your risk of polymorph. But most of the speed teams you face probably don't have 6-star polymorph anyway, or polymorph in general. They've got other stuff. But you've got the foundation for really solid, and obviously you're in gold 3. It's not like you're over here slacking. I think you just got to put a little time into improving some of these pieces on the champions, and then really synergizing the kind of teams that you want to run. Like, I would really work hard on having your 1A, 1B speed team built around your fastest champion, which in this case is Siphi, who happens to be a Void. So I'm probably building that around Siphi, Odin, Arbiter, because they're all Void. So I'm getting that speed bonus no matter what. And knowing that I also have fast nukers to potentially go with them. That would be the biggest thing. Can you get your nukers to that level of speed? And then I'm also trying to invest in a legitimate go second team, which is probably Ancora, Narcissus, Freya, UDK, Harima, like those champions. I'm going to put time into that. Even Duchess, for example, where I'm going to build those champions as tanky as possible, as fast as possible, even though they're go second. Can't be too slow. And I'm going to lean into that as well, so that I have that as a viable option also. But yeah, man, I mean, for a low spend account, you've got some really damn good champs.
Yeah, it's and some of it is targeted spending as well. For example, I spent for Narcissus because I knew Narcissus was going to be good, and they offered a guaranteed for him. He was, not saying you should spend much. Maybe I spent more than I should have. I don't know, but he's been a constant on my account since I got him. Was well worth it. And again, you can see that he's the guy I've invested the most in as far as the Nuker is concerned. Everything's ascended. I think it's the proper ascensions in every particular case. The gear is really good. Obviously, he probably could still be faster for your
Yeah,
level, but it's not like I've slacked off on that.
we're definitely what's going
Oh,
on
that
here.
has not been re-rolled. I mean, heck, see if you're my good luck charm.
Yeah, let's. Oof, yeah, this is. I see why it's not re-rolled. It's already at 8. But you know what?
I
This
got
is an
him.
example of a piece that you do actually re-roll, right?
Yep.
That you do want to try to get to that HP. So we'll give it 1 or 2 here, and let's just see. Come on, HP for the vid.
I'll take speed.
That's actually not bad. I'd probably leave this alone,
Oh yeah.
especially at 8. I'd probably leave this alone because more speed is not a bad thing.
And that's always
Yeah.
what I do with the bottom stuff, especially as a lower spender, is what's the one I want the most? And what am I willing to accept if it doesn't hit the one I want the
Yes.
most?
Yes.
Gloves, for
100%.
example, you'd want the crit damage almost all the time. Crit rate is not the worst thing if it lets you build a champion because you can sometimes make that up somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if it happens to be my attack stat, and I say attack stat because we're talking HP for Narcissus, I'll live with that for a while, at least until I've got all the extra order reroll stuff on.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say too is don't be afraid to glyph damage dealing pieces. But you don't have a 6-star right now, but if you get a 6-star speed glyph, don't be afraid as a general rule to use those on your damage dealers. I think a lot of times we all get obsessed with I want to have the fastest support. I want to make sure I go first no matter what. But you would be surprised how much of a difference it can make in battles if you have fast nukers. It can, I mean, heck, I fought a battle the other night where I didn't go first, but I had temporal chains on my Galathier, which let me cut in. And I was so close to winning this battle, but my Marius just wasn't fast enough. And if he'd had an extra 10 or 15 speed, I win that battle no matter what. And it was versus an Armans. I left the Armans on the team. I had to leave them on. I can't remember what else I was blocking out. But my Marichka went, my Galather went, my Marichka went. I just didn't have quite enough turn meter boost to get the Marius to go next because he wasn't fast enough. And oh, by the way, he was like 325, 330 speed. So
talking about other things to do with Narcissus and stuff like that too. Check out the blessing on Narcissus.
Yeah, I saw that you have temporal chains here, so that's interesting because obviously, Marius will be the one thing there, but counterattacks don't matter as much for him. The biggest thing would just be enfeeble. But since you have
specifically the temporal change is there because it actually gives him. Well, actually, I don't think it's got it at 6-star. You need to get to 6-star to get him the turn meter boost when other people put buffs on. But because he plays well with other people being buffed, I figured the more buffs that the enemy has, having him go faster effectively by slowing the enemy down still made a lot of sense with his kit specifically, which is why I ended up with that. It's one of the few cases where it made sense to not go with one of the generic nuker ones as well.
It's not a bad choice for sure. I would also honestly one of the sneakiest ones I've seen on Narcissus is Life Harvest. You'd be surprised.
I've got that in Korra, which is why I don't have it on him.
Okay, there you go. Like Life Harvest on one of your champs here, kind of nasty. Even at non 6-star, this can do some serious screwing people up if you can get the kill. But I mean, temporal change is interesting because I've never seen that on a Narcissus. I can't speak to how viable it is, but if it's working for you, that's all that matters, right? Like whatever works at your level. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can tell people whenever they watch these kind of videos is everything is relative, right? Everything is relative for your account. Everything is relative for your level. Everything is relative for what you are specifically facing typically and what is on your, in your space. And that's why I take anything that somebody says with a grain of salt, because you may not be able to do some of the things we talk about, or you may not have the champions that we talk about. But the one thing that everybody should be doing is you should be glyphing your stuff. You should be glyphing and ascending this stuff all the time. I don't care if it's top piece. I don't care if it's bottom piece. You got to do it. Every little bit counts. I know it sucks resource-wise, but you would be shocked at the difference that can make. Imagine there have been fights where I had a Gurgo who had this much health left, but he stayed alive because I had everything glyphed up here and everything, ascended up. And that was the difference for me being able to stay alive and have him get an attack off and win versus not. So,
yep.
All right.
And even revisit the masteries too, because I know masteries really can make a huge difference with a lot of champions. Like Narcissus is actually a good example. I've got the Whirlwind of Death on him. I did not go with the first ambush. I think you actually were talking with Ash about how Whirlwind of Death seems to have crept into the meta particularly well because he's regularly killing people. So that's 18 extra speed.
Well, speed is king, right? And although I called the mastery's blessings in that video for half of it, my advice I think was still sound, in that speed is by far the most important determiner of most live arena battles. It's not that you can't win with a go second team, it's just that it is really, really, really hard right now in a way that it hasn't been for a very, very long time. And I would argue in a way that it's never been previously, where if someone has the speeds and they have the champions, hell, a lot of times you just don't even take a turn. You know what I mean? You don't, you're completely locked out. You don't take a turn. It's just game over, and all the stone skin in the world and all the reaction in the world won't protect you. But that's that. Welcome to RaidShadowLegends in 2024. So we'll see if it gets better in 2025.
Probably one last champion to take a look at, because he's free to play, kind of. Carnage.
Yeah.
How would you build a Carnage? Obviously, I've chosen to build him one way, 6-piece Merciless.
Yeah. I think the best build for Carnage is probably the Stone Skin Savage build. Just keeping him alive so he can do those counterattacks, so he can do stuff. I think that's probably your best overall bet. And if you can get it, I think that makes the most sense. If he's not alive, he can't counterattack. Your Carnage is very squishy. Your Carnage is going to get blown apart by somebody.
Well, he doesn't even have a 1-star blessing, so that's 10k extra HP. So.
10k extra HP, but even with 10k extra HP, he's still going to get clapped. This would be a champion that if you can get him in Stone Skin, you can get him in Savage at the same time. That's definitely, I think, the way to go. Just makes him overall harder to deal with, and he is a champion you really want to keep alive, because you want to benefit from what is his passive that where he counterattacks. You know what I'm talking about here. Yeah, here it is.
It's on his A1.
Yeah. So I think for Carnage more than anyone else, Stone Skin Savage really is. I don't want to say it's a necessity, but it's pretty darn close. If you can't do it, try reaction. I'd sacrifice 6-piece Merciless to get him in reaction, all reaction, or Stone Skin Savage in a heartbeat.
Would you sacrifice the accuracy? Because I think I've got him 500 accuracy, 400 accuracy ish.
399. So he does in his second form, he benefits from accuracy, right? He gets more damage. And then also
both forms. I
was just gonna say
the way accuracy works on him, accuracy basically adds extra attack effectively. So it's literally a 1-for-1. Actually, every one of accuracy also counts as attack. So
there you go.
It's certainly not super damage beneficial, but it doesn't hurt him as much as other champions. Obviously,
it's certainly helpful because you have to place his debuffs as well. Which that was the point I was going to make in his first form, is you got to make sure you place these debuffs. But he's already getting ignore resistance on some of this stuff. Although interestingly enough, not cannot be resisted or blocked. This is such a weird thing. I don't know why they didn't give you an ignore resistance here, since it's conditional that you can't resist or block. Really strange on the choice of seal. But look, 30% ignore resistance, that's a massive amount of ignoring resistance. If you have to sacrifice a little bit of accuracy to make him more survivable, you're doing it. Because all the accuracy in the world and all the damage in the world means nothing if the champion is dead. And you have to keep him alive in order for him to be useful, and that's why it's worth it to keep him alive over to lose a little bit of 30 accuracy or a little bit of extra damage. I'm making that trade in a heartbeat.
Or even a full banner. I could certainly see swapping that banner, especially if it gets him in Stone Skin. I lose an accuracy banner, get him in Stone Skin.
Yeah, sometimes you have to make those hard decisions, right? Depends on what you have on your account. But if I'm getting him in Stone Skin and Savage, and I have some level of accuracy on him, so he can still do damage and still place his debuffs. The biggest thing with Carnage is, you want to be able to place those debuffs on damage dealers. You know what I mean? On Taurus Marichka, you want to be able to put him onto Taurus, right? If you get him on Taurus, you're effectively keeping yourself alive, and that's the big thing. There. And look, his debuff spread can't be resisted, right? If he's killing someone. So you don't need as much accuracy for that, to spread that to maybe champions that have super high resistance, if you're even seeing those, because a lot of times you don't see that as much anymore in Arena, because it's nowhere near as viable as it once was, and it wasn't super viable before. But yeah, man, I think some interesting stuff going on here. I hope this was helpful. I know this wasn't a rebuild all your champion stuff, but hopefully helpful for you, hopefully helpful for viewers. I've never actually done one of these on the channel, so this is the first one, man.
Yeah,
And
and I think some of the stuff is stuff that obviously I've known because I've done it on some of my champions,
mhm.
but it's nice to hear some of the reinforcement with it. It's nice to hear your perspective. And honestly, as I put into you, I think this will be more important for a lot of your viewers who are less active about using their glyphs. I mean, I've got a ton of glyphs because I've just been playing a while and stockpiling them. Some people have a ton of glyphs because they literally have never used a glyph in their life and then wonder why they can't hit the speeds.
Yeah, you got to use, like, I know it hurts to do it because I know how hard it is to get these resources. And as someone's perpetually out of glyphs, it sucks. But that's what you have to do if you want to compete. If you're not doing it, somebody else is, and that means they're stronger than you, and that means they're kicking your ass. So, yeah,
Yeah,
man.
and it's not even an arena. That's something you want to get
Oh,
better in Hydra, you got to be using the glyphs. You want to
for
get
sure,
better in Clan Boss, you got to be using the glyphs.
for sure,
It's a resource.
100%. Well, Bront, any closing things you want to share before we send them on their way?
No, I mean, you can certainly catch me on Twitch and YouTube as well, so I appreciate that. And definitely been fun talking with you. You are awesome, and I said I appreciate you going over this stuff. Obviously, it's certainly going to help me advance in Arena, but I think the goal of this was really to help our viewers find some useful information out of this as well. And if I have to be the person that gets poked fun at expense, that's fine. And
No, listen, man. None of what you're doing is anything to be poked fun at. Like, you built some really good
oh, yeah,
champs here, and it's. I think the beautiful thing about Raid is we all learn new stuff all the time. I learn things from other arena players all the time. Stuff
yeah,
that
and that's
I
why
should
we
have
love these
thought of.
collabs. It's nice to be able to. I may know one thing, you may know one thing, and let's talk about it. And I can learn something from you, you can learn something from me, and that's awesome as well.
For sure, 100%. Well, guys, it's been such a pleasure, Bront, having you on. Make sure to check out his channel. Again, it's going to be linked down below. Had a blast talking arena, and I hope that this leads to you getting into Gold 4 and dominating in Gold 4. And hey, we've got live arena seasons coming, so make sure you guys are revisiting your arena accounts as well, because hopefully that will be a feature that gets everybody a little more excited about live arena, even myself. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. It's been Big Papa Drock and Bront Cat Herder, and we are out.